Today we're talking about fingertip mice. We'll talk a little about aim performance, we'll look at a beta release from Pulsar that sparked this whole video, we'll look at a pre-production build of the new Zeromouse blade with the final mouse internals, plus we'll hear from the man himself, the Bruce Wayne of tech YouTube, Ali from Optimum Tech. So fingertip mice aren't something I usually get into because over the years of doing this, I've convinced myself that my hands are just too big for these. Honestly, they're not even that big. They measure 21 by 10.5 centimeters, so a little bigger than medium, I guess, but the performance mouse hobby has a tendency to skew towards smaller hand sizes and smaller mice. I have played around with stuff from G-Wolves in the past, but they've been a little hit or miss for me QC-wise and nothing I ever considered seriously maining. I can only speak for myself, but after doing reviews for nearly a decade, I just don't get as genuinely excited about as many products as I did when I was first coming up. I ignore a lot of review requests, and it's really rare that I'll actually reach out to a company about something. Then Pulsar goes and teases this, the X2F beta, and it was love at first sight for me. It was all looks. Something about this industrial design and this artwork just really speaks to me. It's wireless and it has side buttons, which is a bonus for me because I actually use them. I prefer to bind to mouse buttons versus keys whenever I can. And it's carbon composite, so I figured it would be ultra lightweight. As you may or may not already know, given the size of the mouse, it's really not. It weighs in about 42.5 grams, and as ridiculous as I'm sure this sounds to some of you out there, that's heavy given the dimensions and the grip style here. The weight matters here because of how you grip this mouse. You're only going to support this with your fingertips, and the majority of the movement comes from the wrist. For context, this is Pulsar's X2 Crazy Light. It's a size 1, a small version of the X2 shape, so quite a bit larger than the X2F, and it weighs just over 37 grams with the full skates. The full-size Viper V3 Pro weighs only 54 grams. So I started playing with this mouse, and two big things became clear over a couple of weeks. One, hitting this front side button feels great. I don't even think about it, but the rear side button is problematic. Because this frame is so small, there's no anchor point for your hand on the rear of the mouse, so it floats horizontally balanced by your pinky finger. Your mileage may vary, but for me, for this mouse to feel balanced and stable in my hand, I have to have a very specific finger position. Where my thumb naturally needs to be, the front button's great. If I move my thumb back to hit the rear buttons, it pushes the rear of the mouse toward the outside of my hand. And if I just rock the thumb back to hit the button with the first section of my thumb, same thing, because I'm no longer applying pressure to the front of my thumb. So it's like every time I hit that button, I have to be ready to consciously apply more pressure from my pinky to keep the mouse balanced. I'm sure I could get used to that over time, but I always play better when I'm not thinking about how I'm holding my mouse. Two, on a more positive note, I noticed a small uptick in my aim consistency over my usual long-running main, the Razer Viper V3 Pro. I usually play on a slow control pad, the Jupiter Pro from Lethal Gaming Gear. This mouse feels built really solid, overbuilt for what it is probably. But I found myself wanting to increase my sensitivity every few days because this would start to feel sluggish to me on that pad, even with the dot skates. Maybe it was that combination of mouse and pad, or maybe I was just getting more confident with that grip style the longer I practiced, but it really got me wondering, how much does weight really matter with fingertip grip? I knew Optimum had been working on a concept to take his hyperlight Zeromouse mod kits to a full production mouse, so I reached out. How did you get started on this path? What mouse were you using that you were like, I want to see how small and how light we can go? Like what tipped you that way?
Basically how I got started, I was using the MTK for a long time. That kind of introduced me to fingertip. Dude, that first Zeromouse that I made, I was like, this is it. I'm using this. Like, I don't care if people say this looks weird. When you say, okay, I'm going to use this janky 3D printed DIY mouse, I admit to myself that I'm no longer going to review other mice searching for that end game because this is it. I got obsessed with the design, and what you have there, the blade, is the latest.
Not only did he send me his first real pre-production build of the blade, but he was also cool enough to let me borrow his Sound Koenig to check out for this video. I've seen this mouse a bunch, but I never bothered to buy it because it's super expensive. It has no side buttons and it's wired. I go back to the paracord mod days, so I couldn't imagine that this cable wasn't going to fight this mouse, but after using it in person, even calling this a cable is an exaggeration. It's a wire, a super thin, super flexible, very non-intrusive wire. This too is built very well. It's shockingly light at just under 23 grams, and again, I've played pretty well with this. Now this pre-production build of the blade currently weighs in at just over 21 grams, including the skates, and it's wireless. Keep in mind this is pre-production, so stuff like the packaging, even the layer lines and the resin itself are not indicative of the final product. This is about as stripped down as you can make the concept of a mouse. It doesn't include side buttons or much of a shell really. I was afraid when I first picked this up. I have a tendency to squeeze my mouse really hard, and I was worried that I was just going to absolutely crunch this in my hand. And for the first, probably 2 or 3 rounds I ran with this, I felt like I had to be conscious of that. Because, I mean, really, it just feels like I could just and and that would be the end of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You could. I'm fully aware. You could crush the Zeromouse if you wanted to. The way it's been designed is to be as light as possible under certain constraints, basically firm grip aiming. So someone playing with a fingertip grip, gripping it fairly firmly, the mouse should not break. And you can go a little bit beyond that. It will survive most drops as well. Even off a desk, but it's not a super strong mouse. It's not flexy though. The new material you have, the resin is stiffer.
I did notice that versus the other shell. It really doesn't have a lot of flex to it. In terms of frame design, there's just not a lot to it, man. It's just a really efficient frame design. How it has any structural rigidity to it at all when it looks like this is pretty impressive for sure.
Oh, thank you, man. It's been a long time developing up to it. Yeah, the resin material has been probably the bigger leap recently.
Moving to that Formlabs resin was the right move for sure here. This is a significant step up from the nylon 12 he was using to print these previously. I do think if you printed an entire complete mouse shell out of this resin, you would need some grips, but based on how light this is, how you hold it, and the very minimal points of contact, I don't feel like you do. Truth told, my immediate impression was that there was no way this was gonna work with my hand size, but I was wrong because there's not a complete entire mouse shell here. You don't get to decide where your fingers go. Pause. You get one option, and shockingly, it worked fine for me. And because it's so light, you're only applying just enough pressure to hold the mouse in place, so even using it over a long time, you don't get any cramping in your hand like you would if you were trying to claw grip a mouse that's too small for you. So this uses the new Final Mouse Falcon internal module with a full-size battery, so you're getting the wireless tech and the firmware of the Final Mouse competition. Not some generic factory firmware and sensor implementation, so this frees him up to focus completely on the physical design of this mouse. The scroll encoder here is a placeholder, not the final. The switches are Huano pink dots, solid choice, and as you can see, the trigger sits right there. There's just the smallest hint of pre-travel here, which needs to be there.
There's intentional pre-travel so you don't accidentally click. So I can make the tolerances lower. But the thing is, with fingertip grip, you're already preloading those front two triggers a little bit. And I was finding that when it was too sensitive, I would accidentally click them. So yeah, there is a little bit of pre-travel that is intentional. The clicks should still feel nice and light though.
They're super light. It's cool seeing such an open, like if you're nerdy about mice, this is really cool to see an open design like this because you can really see, you just plainly see the frame interacting with the switches and you can see exactly what's happening. And they're like right there. So to get me started, I got some good info about sensitivity, surface, and a pretty interesting breakdown of using raw Excel, which I'll probably include in a future video after I've had a chance to spend some more time with that software. I will say it is tough for me to play without at least one side button, which I have mapped in nearly every game to crouch or slide, and we're talking years of this, so it's going to take a long time for my mobility to not suffer using a mouse with no side buttons. Thing is though, I was hitting some beams with this, and it really didn't take long at all to adapt from an aim standpoint. It immediately reminded me of Rocket Jump Ninja's theory when talking about low front heights, where you gain more control the closer your first two fingers and your thumb get to the natural posture of holding like a pen or a pencil. It was a blast to play with, particularly after moving to the wall hack glass pad, which I enjoyed with this mouse a lot more than my usual lethal Jupiter Pro because of the amount of control I had over the mouse itself. And for the first time in quite a long time, I actually felt my aim improving incrementally with this, so for me, it's worth taking the temporary hit to mobility. Over time, I've come to realize that in a video, when I say something was a blast or I say something was a lot of fun to use, what that actually translates to is this was an interesting change versus what I'm used to. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, but in about a week, I'm gonna revert back to what I know and what's comfortable. What was surprising here was that I came into this just curious about the experience of using a mouse like this. I didn't expect to find something that really made me want to start taking a serious look at my aim again and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. This has been living on my desk for weeks now, and I've had to go out of my way to put it away when I shoot other videos to make sure it's not visible because I didn't want to tip anybody to this project until it was ready to go. Being perfectly honest with you, this is not something that I saw myself. My preconceived notions of this was not something that I saw myself like really pursuing. I thought I would do a good video about what it was and what it wasn't, and not specific to your mouse, but just kind of that style of mouse.
Yeah, of course.
And instead, I found something that I want to dive into a little more, I think.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me really happy. Yeah. I think actually a lot of people will be like that. Maybe I'm biased because that's been my experience with this style of mouse and aiming and playing. Like, I don't want to use anything else. Like, just bluntly, this is what I want to use. I think a lot of people, when they see the light, they will feel the same way.
I think it's hard to not be biased when you're talking about a product you introduced because clearly you thought you could create something better for you than what was out there already. And I think it's easy for people to misconstrue a deep belief in your own idea as marketing, just an effort to sell your product. In the meantime, I just had one more important question for Ali. And probably the most important question today. Bro, are you actually Batman?
I'm not Batman. Come on.
I mean, I've never seen you guys in the same place, but whatever. I mean, The accusations are definitely out there. That's all I'm saying.
You know what? I need the cars to be black. I need an Alfred. Well, who knows? Maybe I'm Alfred. I am making the tech.
So my journey into fingertip mice was an interesting ride for sure. I'm fully aware that this isn't going to work for everybody. You'll have to make your own call on side buttons, and I don't want to overstate my impressions like it's the end-all be-all to aiming. But what I will say is that this made a noticeable improvement both to my flicks and my tracking, and I feel like there's a lot more for me to explore here. So does the weight matter? Yeah, especially with this grip style, 20 grams matters a lot. My favorite dumb idiot comment under every single lightweight mouse review is like, oh, if that mouse is too heavy, maybe you should try hitting the gym once in a while. I mean, sure, if you're arm aiming an 85-gram mouse and you're finding that difficult, you should probably drink some milk. But really, it's that if you're gonna game a lot, multiple hours a day, and you're a wrist aimer, the mileage on your wrist really adds up over time. And moving something lighter versus heavier is better for session fatigue and for the long-term healthier wrist. Nobody goes to the gym to hit joint day. I think whether Pulsar pursues this will really come down to demand, because they're going to need to strip a lot of the weight to be competitive, and this style of mouse will always be a niche product. The blade, even being sold through at this moment, will be back in time if this is something that you want to pursue. Sadly, I haven't really found an inexpensive way to experiment with a mouse this style, so if you know of anything like that, please drop that down in the comments. For now, finding a lower priced G-Wolves HSK on the secondary market is probably your best bet. Huge thanks to Optimum for helping me put this together. Off camera, he's every bit as impressive as you think he'd be. His biggest concern was how to get me all the information I needed to do this video, how to get the information he wanted out of me about my experience with his mouse, all without coming across like he was trying to use my video to promote his product. That should tell you a lot about the kind of person he is. I'll be away at Computex for a few days working on a couple very exciting projects, but I'll be back with a fresh one for you before you know it. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Stay up.